Hello, everyone. In this lecture, we are going to be talking about contribution margin and break-even analysis. And throughout the lecture, we're going to cover contribution margin, break-even analysis in units and dollars, and target profit analysis. So what is break-even analysis? So it's a methodology used to determine the dollar and unit value that a company needs to produce and earn to cover its expenses. So typically this is used for new businesses that are launching a new product, but existing businesses also use it. Let's say they want to launch a new product and they want to find out, how many units do I need to produce to get to a certain dollar value or to just get to the break-even point where I'm able to cover all of my expenses. Right? Because companies cannot earn a profit until they know what their break-even point is. So when total revenue equals total production, that is the break-even point. And what a company needs to know in order to calculate this are their fixed costs for producing the product. And these are costs that do not change. And then they also need to know their variable costs. So as sales occur, these numbers change. So as an example, if I'm Intel and I make chips and I sell 100 chips, I'm going to need more in production material to produce those chips. But if I have rent that I have to pay at my manufacturing facility, that's a fixed cost and that will not change. The contribution margin represents how much profit a company is earning on the goods or products it sells, and it does not include fixed costs. And we just went through fixed costs and variable costs. So some may think that the contribution margin is the same as gross profit margin, and it's different, right? Gross profit margin takes revenue minus the cost of goods sold. It takes everything. It takes fixed costs and variable costs. Excuse me. So how the contribution margin differs is it takes revenue minus only the variable costs, and then that will give you your contribution margin. So it shows how much a company has to produce to cover their fixed cost. This is used by management for product comparisons, pricing of a product, figuring out sales commissions to be paid to sales reps, and it's the foundation for the break-even analysis. So let's dive in. So here's an assumption that we're going to work through. You're starting a new company and you are selling personalized pop sockets for phones, and you want to know what your break-even point will be in units and dollars. So here are some of the things that I need to know, and I'm making assumptions for the purpose of this lecture. So I sell my pop sockets for $5 a unit. So every pop socket that I sell is $5. My fixed costs total $4,000, and you can see here that includes rent, utilities, and insurance. That doesn't change. My variable costs are plastics, metal handle, and decals, for example. And for every unit that I produce, that's my cost per unit. So it costs me $2.75 to make the pop socket, and then I sell it for $5. So the first thing that you want to do is figure out what your contribution margin is. And very simply, it's your selling price per unit minus your variable costs. So my contribution margin is $2.25. So now if I want to find out my break-even units, I'm going to take my fixed costs and I'm going to divide that by the contribution margin that we just figured out. So my fixed cost in this scenario is $4,000. And my contribution margin is $2.25. So doing that calculation, it turns out that I need to sell 1,778 units of these pop sockets to break even. Now, if I want to know the dollar amount that I need to sell, again, I'm going to calculate the contribution margin first. That is the selling price per unit minus my variable costs, which is $2.25. Now I need to calculate the contribution margin ratio. And how you do that is you take the contribution margin and you divide that by the selling price per unit. So I'm taking $2.25, which is my contribution margin, dividing that by my selling price of $5 per pop socket, and my contribution margin ratio is 45%. So now I take my fixed costs and I divide that by the contribution margin. So my fixed costs are $4,000, and I divide that by the 45% of the contribution margin that we've just figured out, which means I need to sell $8,890 in order to break even. Remember, that's breaking even, it's not earning a profit. So if you want to check your work, the dollars needed to break even, which was $8,890, and I divide that by the units that need to be sold, 1,778 equals $5 per unit. In this section, we're going to talk about target profit, right? So this is when you want to know, okay, I want to know if I earn a certain amount of money above that break-even point, how many units do I need to sell? And how much revenue do I need to generate? So in this scenario, we want to reach a target of $15,000, which is above that break-even point that we just figured out. So my assumptions are going to be the same. And first step is you have to calculate your contribution margin, which is your selling price per unit minus your variable costs, and that's $225. So now I want to figure out my target profit. To do so, you take your fixed cost plus what you want your target profit to be. So in this scenario, we're saying we want to earn $15,000. That's what we want our profit to be. So I take my fixed costs, I add that $15,000, and I come to a total of $19,000. So what does that mean? Now I want to know how many units do I need to sell to get to the $19,000. I take that $19,000 and I divide it by the contribution margin. And that tells me that I need to sell 8,445 units. And to know that dollar amount, I take the target profit and then I divide that by the contribution margin ratio, which was 45. So I need to earn $42,222 in order to reach a target of that $15,000. So again, you can check your work. Units need to be sold. We just calculated that as 8,445 units times the price per unit, and that comes out to the $42,222. So what does all of this mean? So it helps a company to make decisions on their selling price, right? Is it too high? Is it too low? Is there something that I can do with my variable costs? Perhaps if I work with another vendor, maybe I can get those amounts to come down. Maybe if I produce more in bulk, the vendors will negotiate prices with me. It also helps a company to determine the number of units that they need to sell in order to break even, right? So that can help them to know, how many people do I need to hire, what type of equipment, how many units per day, so forth and so on. And then it can help a company to determine the number of units needed to be sold to earn a profit by using the target profit. So in this lecture, here's what we've learned. Contribution margin. The formula is revenue minus variable costs, and that gives you your contribution margin. And anything that is left over is to pay for the fixed costs with the hopes of achieving profitability. The contribution margin ratio The calculation is contribution margin divided by the selling price. Break-even analysis is used by companies to determine what it will take to become profitable, and it uses fixed costs and variable costs.